Cassidy. Cassidy. Madeline. Use on the pass. Spread yourself out. Who's there, Charlie? Colin is there. Who else do we need? Is it just Colin and Carson? Where is Carson? And Colin is right there, right? You're going to come with me? All right. I think that's as good as we can do. How's it ready? Good morning. Welcome to the President's Convocation to begin another year of great Centenary education. To start us today, I'd like to welcome the chaplain of Centenary College, the Reverend Lindy Broderick, to offer our invocation.
Will you please join me in an attitude of prayer? Spirit of light, shine brightly upon us today and illuminate our paths as we begin this new semester and this new academic year. Enlighten each of us with fresh ideas and new possibilities in the coming days and months ahead. Protect us from the threats and chaos that swirl around so that we may be optimistic and confident in our future. Empower us to achieve the goals for which we strive collectively and individually. Unite us as one in our Centenary community with the common purpose of preparing global citizens to live productive lives of vitality and purpose. Let us celebrate the diversity on our campus with the friends, classmates, faculty, and staff from many faiths and cultures. Strengthen us in community and in our commitment to knowledge and wisdom. Help us to become beacons of light for others as we foster peace and justice. Amen.
close. Good morning and welcome, Centenary College students, faculty, staff, and honored guests. My family has an unofficial motto that we adopted several years ago during a friendly competition sponsored by my father. Give me a snap if your family is like mine and the words friendly and competition don't really belong in the same sentence together. Okay, there are a few of you out there that feel my pain. Anyway, our motto is not as fancy as some mottos. Ask President Holloman for his family motto, for example. But it makes our family happy, and it is glad to be here. It is simple, yet genuine and meaningful. Today, I am glad to be here with you. One of our most important events at President's Convocation is the presentation of the Honor Code book that has been newly signed by our first-year students. The first article of the Honor Code states, each student who enrolls in Centenary College undergraduate classes becomes a part of the Centenary Honor System and is responsible to the Honor Code in both day and night classes. The Honor Code of Centenary College is founded on the idea that honor is that intangible quality which, if it pervades all phases of campus life, will tend to foster a spirit of dignity and personal integrity. In accepting the Honor Code, we all promise to act with integrity and to hold each other accountable to act with integrity. And while we may describe honor as intangible, I think we can agree that honor is easiest to identify in the most difficult moments, the moments when we are most tested, most strained, most tempted. Today, I suggest that we are in a time when this pledge is vital far beyond academic assignments. For the honor that we value to truly pervade all phases of campus life, we now accept the discomfort of face masks, the inconvenience of testing and quarantine, and the difficult navigation of vaccination. We can and we must act with honor in these moments, with respect for differing needs and values, with responsibility for adherence to protocols, and with commitment to the safety and well-being of all. Some will tell you that honor is uncommon. In my experience, they are wrong. I see honor demonstrated every day on this campus. I see it here today in this chapel as I look around. As we individually and collectively strive for honor, we make Centenary strong. We make Centenary great. I am so glad to be with you today, kicking off academic year 2021-2022. This is going to be a terrific year. It is my great privilege to now invite Chief Justice of the Honor Court, Itzel Sagarin, forward for the presentation of the Honor Code book.
Dr. Soul quite rightly said I need no introduction, so she's not going to do that. Welcome, thank you, choir. You all have clearly been working hard since I saw you at camp last Wednesday. It was beautiful, as always. Usually the choir sits behind me and I say the choir has my back. Now I feel surrounded by the choir, and that's cool too. Welcome to Centenary's President's Convocation. As I say at this moment every year, just so we're all on the same page, convocation, of course, simply means coming together. And colleges have been having convocations since the 1500s. Used to celebrate all sorts of things, new buildings, new presidents, but most often what we're doing today to begin a new academic year and to welcome you into a community that has learning as its highest value and its prime goal. Centenary uses convocations throughout the semester and throughout the year as touchstones when we come together to hear guest speakers or celebrate important milestones. Colleges have traditions, and we've just entered into one of the very serious traditions here, the Honor Code. We talk a lot about traditions at Centenary, and I think sometimes some of them are silly and go away in a hurry. Alumni, when they come back, are always surprised that what they thought was a big major tradition when they were in, 2 years after they've gone, nobody remembers anymore. So traditions are a funny thing, and you'll see that around our campus. You'll see what Mr. Allen refers to as the tombstones over there, talking about the bagels, a tradition that has gone away. For many years, it was a tradition that freshmen wore beanies for their first year. That's a tradition that went away when the GIs coming back from World War II, having fought, said, I ain't wearing no beanie. Things come and go. But I think this is an important part of our tradition. It's one of my favorite times to stop and reset and get ready for the new year. Frequently, President's Convocation marks the unofficial end of the orientation period, but not this year. We have entered into an exciting new period for the next 4 or 6 weeks, especially for our freshmen and sophomores, the Start Strong initiative, and we're going to be doing lots of fun things and lots of ways to make sure that you do start strong. As Dean Miller reminded the sophomores on Sunday night, it's pretty clear that if you do something for about 6 weeks, you get into the habit and it becomes part of your being. And so we hope that you'll take advantage of these next 4 or 6 weeks to get started and start strong, because of course our fondest wish and goal for you is to succeed. And our favorite day of the year is watching you walk across the stage and receive your diploma. I hope then that as we get closer to the end of orientation, you, the first year students, have been made to feel welcomed. You're excited but not too overwhelmed about your year and the years to come at Centenary. I will say, especially for our first year students, I'm going to be asking for some response in a few minutes, so pay attention and be ready to answer a couple of questions. Over the 5 previous years of doing this talk, I've dealt with a number of topics that are important about the things that we do here. We've talked about journeying and storytelling and vocation and some other topics beyond that. But this year is a little bit different, because rather than talk about the tasks that we need to perform or some of the challenges you might encounter over your time here, I want to talk about the context in which we do these things, and in particular, the context of a changing environment. The notion that change is inevitable. And what does that mean for us? This is actually one of the earliest things that humans thought about when they began to be self-reflective. Some of you have probably been taught over your time in high school that Socrates was the father of modern philosophy, or the father of philosophy. Well, that's kind of true, but not completely true. There were philosophers before Socrates. They're known as a group quite imaginatively as the pre-Socratics. And we don't know very much about them. They didn't leave lots and lots of writing. Well, of course, Socrates didn't leave any writing. All we know about Socrates is what Plato wrote about him. But Plato wrote a lot. The pre-Socratics, we usually have just fragments or short documents. But one of them is very important. His name was Heraclitus, and he lived about 100 years before Socrates, so about 500 BC. He didn't leave very much, and much of what he wrote was kind of confusing. In fact, he's sometimes known as Heraclitus the Obscure, not because he was obscure, but because his writings were confusing. My faculty colleagues will assure you that's not one of our goals as scholars, is to be needlessly confusing. But what we remember Heraclitus for mostly is the observation that sometimes you may have heard this as an old saying, you can't step in the same river twice. It's also put another way, all is flux, he said or wrote. Everything is changing all the time. All is flux. What does that mean for us? How can we, and you in particular over these next 4 years, take on the central task of managing change? And as I thought about that, I developed a typology of change. And I've not seen one of these, but I'm sure I'm not the first person to think of it, so I apologize if I'm unconsciously borrowing someone else's thoughts. I'm a political scientist. I teach international relations. I'm a social scientist. Social scientists love 2x2 matrices, 2x2 boxes. So I'm going to propose a 2x2 typology of change. So you have to follow along with me here. I propose that we can distinguish change on 2 dimensions. One dimension is whether it was gradual or sudden. How fast did it happen? And the other dimension is, was it planned or unplanned? Now, I actually think we could add a third dimension of magnitude of change, but then instead of 4 boxes, you've got 8, and it gets really complicated in a hurry. So we're going to deal with this 2x2 matrix of types of change and see where that gets us. I'm going to start with the quadrant, so have this 2x2 matrix in your mind. So we've got one quadrant that is change that is sudden but planned. Sudden but planned. Now, I acknowledge that it's a little bit of a contradiction. If we've planned it, in the sense it may not be sudden, but at the moment it is sudden. Anybody got an example of a sudden planned change? Just shout out, but make sure I can hear. I would come down and talk to you, but that would mess up the live stream, so sorry about that. Sorry? Pregnancy. Okay, we might wonder about the sudden, but yeah, no, that's, okay. I didn't think of that one. Interesting. You've all just accomplished one of them. What's one? Moving. Starting college. Moving. You've picked up from one place and you've gone someplace else. Now, for each of these types of change, I'm going to suggest a couple of questions that we should ask ourselves as we encounter that kind of change, as we do this broader task of managing. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this particular cell, but I would think that if we have a change that is sudden, but maybe we've seen it coming and therefore it's planned, we want to ask ourselves, how do we prepare for this change? What are our expectations going in? That's going to be important as we talk about other types of change. So knowing that something's coming, seeing it come down the line, gives us a chance to prepare and be ready for that change. That's all I'm going to say about that one. Move to the cell on my diagram. These could be arranged in almost any one. The one right below. Sudden change, unplanned sudden change. Unplanned change that happens suddenly. What's an example? Death. Yeah, that one's, man, it got dark here in a hurry. COVID. Snow. Oh, yeah, thank you. Yeah, that was, yeah. I was, no, a story for a different day. But yes, surprises. Good surprises, bad surprises. Crises fall into this topic. There's a lot to be said about this cell of change and some really interesting questions, some of which we have been dealing with in our response to the pandemic. The central question around crises are, how do we respond? And I want to suggest, sort of in passing, it's part of a larger topic, but the need when met with a crisis, and you'll be met with crisis, big or small, one of the things that humans do, because I think it's hardwired into our biology to a certain extent, it's hardwired into our psychology that we identify threats very quickly, to go back to our sort of hunter-gatherer origin. We have a tendency, some of us, when faced with a crisis, to immediately slip to that enemy friend, good, bad, fight, flight, dichotomy. Black or white, do I do this? So do we go to all remote learning? Boom! Or do we find a more nuanced strategy? Stepping back from the crisis. Crises, almost by definition, ask for a very rapid response, but we usually need to step back. I hope someday you'll get a chance to become acquainted with the work of Daniel Kahneman, Nobel Prize-winning economist. Wonderful book called Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow, or something like that, where we actually do have two different parts of our brain that work differently, whether we're thinking fast or thinking slow, and we need both of those. But again, lots of questions here. How do we prepare for things that may or may not happen, or may happen, will happen, but with very low probabilities? Donald Rumsfeld, who just passed away, got a lot of teasing for his phrase about the unknown unknowns and the known unknowns and so forth and so on. But in fact, on that particular case, he was right. We have known unknowns. We know some things, but we don't know everything about them. We know that a meteor large enough to create havoc on Earth will hit the Earth. Will it happen in 5 years? Or will it happen in 5 million years? Which, as Dr. Beeler will tell you, is a long time in human existence, but an eye blink in galactic time. Humans will be long gone by then. Do we prepare for that instance? Our friends in the financial world talk about black swan events. Black swans, they're rare, but they happen. How do we deal with them? I will say in passing here, but very importantly, one of the ways that we respond to this particular crisis is respond, adapt, take care of ourselves. We get the vaccine, please. Lots of opportunities to do that. Moving to the other side of our diagram then, we talk about change that is gradual. How about gradual planned change? Anybody got an example? College. Sorry, somebody else said what? Aging. Gradual change. Planned. Interesting. Yeah, my father, who lived to be 94, said, growing old is not for the faint of heart. And I'm increasingly recognizing the truth of that. The ones I had were, for example, I had college on my list. Diets. Diet, a nice planned change. We're going to eat less or exercise more. I think one of the central questions we have to ask ourselves around this type of change is, what happens when things don't go as planned? We've made this nice planned change, and things don't work. Are we taken aback? Do we reset? Do we work harder? It depends a lot on the nature of the challenge and whether it's a change that we can actually do something about, or is it a change of circumstance? But for this cell, I want to impress upon you specifically, when things don't go as you planned for them in your college career, don't let that stop you. Find some resilience, find some grit, as they say. One of your colleagues in the sophomore class said at our sophomore dinner on Sunday night, she said she was looking forward to a 4.0 this year. She said, boy, last year I had to find out that Centenary is not like high school. It's harder. Some of you, and I can probably count myself in on this one many, many years ago, you probably made it pretty successfully through high school without trying super hard. You're going to have to try harder, and you may get the first C. We hope for no worse than that, but let's say the first C in your life. How are you going to respond to that? It's thrown a wrench in the change, the planned gradual change that you put forward of your college career. Please don't let that derail you. Understand, the whole point of this talk is to understand that change will happen, and you need to respond. Finally, then, we come to unplanned gradual change. Unplanned gradual change. Anybody got any examples? Cancer. Personal growth. I jotted down the freshman 15, which some of us have experienced as the COVID-15. Personal growth, your vocation. It's another talk for another day, but your vocation, what are you called to do? The famous definition of vocation is where your passion and the needs of the world meet. One of our tasks here at Centenary is to help you think through that vocation, and it will change. It will change over your life. My wife and I spent a year in a discernment program around the vocation, my vocation, and what does it mean to be a college president before I chose to go down this path. So it happens even late in life. Spiritual changes. We continue to grow and think about our spirituality and our relationship with deities, God, and each other. The questions that I jotted down for this cell are, how do we recognize that change? I mean, that's one of the dangers of these gradual, unplanned changes. You didn't plan them, they've happened slowly, and then all of a sudden you look in the mirror and you gain 15 pounds. Or those skinny jeans just don't quite fit anymore. How do we recognize the change as it comes upon us? And then, of course, how do we react to that change? Do we view this as an opportunity? We've changed. Somehow we've recognized that we've changed. Can we go back and unpack what brought the change about? Is it welcome change or is it unwelcome change? Some of these gradual, unplanned change are going to be great. You're going to realize all of a sudden, maybe, or gradually, that you've developed new interests, new passions, new callings. Reverse is true too. You may learn unpleasant things that you need to go back and change. Are we going to take this opportunity to examine ourselves? Going back to our friend Socrates, one of his most famous sayings is, the unexamined life is not worth living. Some of you, especially some of these folks up here, may be more familiar with the parody of that in the musical Wicked, where the character sings, life is painless for the brainless. I will live the unexamined life. Part of the essence of being human is to reflect, be self-aware, examine. But that requires some things, and we here at Centenary are here to help you for that, to recognize and embrace these kinds of unplanned gradual changes. Sometimes you just need a mirror to look at those skinny jeans, but sometimes you need a sounding board. Sometimes you need a best friend. Sometimes you need a counselor who will help you work through what you are observing, this change that has snuck up on you. I came to college, not me, as in quotes, I came to college to go into pre-med. I realize now I don't want to be a doctor. What do you do with that? We have lots of people here to help you. Your friends can help you. But it's really important in these cases where change sneaks up on you, good or bad, to process and to help take that next step. It was unplanned, but how do we begin to adapt and deal with that change? Which brings me to my final comments. Back in the summertime, when I began thinking about this topic, I mentioned it to Professor Hamming. She'd asked what I was going to talk about because she likes to think about that with regard to the Trek classes, and told her I was thinking about this idea of change, and she mentioned a book to me, or actually a series of 2 books, and I already had them on my list of books to read. I actually do keep a list in Microsoft Notes of book to read, and this one was The Parable of the Sower, and its sequel by a woman named Octavia Butler. How many people have heard of this or read it? Yeah, a handful. That's good. Octavia Butler is a fascinating woman. She was born in 1947, died, unfortunately, fairly young in 2006. She was the first science fiction writer to win the so-called MacArthur Genius Grant. Also a path-breaking woman of color in an overwhelmingly white male industry of science fiction writing, and she won all the awards, the Hugo Awards and the Nebula Awards, and wrote a ton, short stories and books. But this book, The Parable of the Sower, published in 1993, so I think we can reasonably say it was one of the things that brought her to the attention of the MacArthur Foundation, who gave her that award in 1995. In The Parable of the Sower, I encourage you to read it. It's an easy read. It takes place about now in a dystopian California. The United States has slid without any war, without even a pandemic, but just through the gradual accretion of events, has slid into near anarchy and roving gangs and arsonists and all sorts of things. And the central character in this book, young woman, 18 I think she is, in processing all of going around her, what's going on, develops a set of beliefs based on the idea that change is everywhere. In fact, change is so much everywhere that she posits that God is change. God is change. Now, I'm not going to go back down that path any farther. It's a really interesting conversation, and I would love to talk more. It's, of course, in direct conflict with what many religions posit as one of the central features of God, that God is never changing, is eternal. Interesting conversation to be had there. But in the process of these books, we get snippets of what this character has written, essentially as scriptures for her new religion. And one of her central ideas is that we can manage. That God does, one of the reasons she likes this is God doesn't do to us, but God is changed, therefore we can manage change. And she has these words, and these will be my closing, almost my closing words. Alter the speed or the direction of change. Vary the scope of change. Recombine the seeds of change. Transmute the impact of change. Seize change. Use it, adapt, and grow. Friends, I've said in this talk in earlier years, if 4 years from now you cross the stage the same person you are now, we will have failed. It won't happen, just by nature of life. I encourage you, take this opportunity, recognize the kinds of change you're going to encounter, seize change, use it, adapt, and grow. Thank you. To close, I'm going to ask Reverend Broderick to come back and offer our benediction. I'd ask you to stand, remain standing, and sing the alma mater lustily. And then please also stay in your seats while the academic procession leaves. Thank you for being here.
Please wait. Please wait for the benediction. Friends, as you go forward and change, be bold, be brave, be kind. May God keep you safe and keep you well as you go forward in peace.